Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On today's show, I have a very special guest. He goes by Jacob J. He operates the Rise to Liberty podcast. I was on there just recently talking about the Manchurian Candidate. Done a lot of work on Manchurian Candidate ties to events in American history. But I was looking over his stuff. He also operates a Substack. It's called Beware the Mockingbird. And I was supposed to do a show on Fort Bragg technical problems. We had technical problems today, which I'm surprised we have technical problems at this point. I've done so many shows. Anyway, StreamYard is not great. It's turned into trash. I saw this article he wrote, MKULTRA is my Vietnam shadow. And I've done some shows recently on this subject. And I think there's a lot of information to mine, people making connections. But this is going to be a show where we're going to kind of talk about pretty dark subjects, but it ties these serial killers together. I've done a lot of shows. He actually mentions Vronsky in his article, Peter Vronsky, who I've had on my show about the rise of the serial killers, this kind of spike in killings that happened right around 70s and 80s, or the afterword of all these tests and weird things going on. So there is some kind of tie there, but Jacob can talk more about that. So Jacob, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me on. I deeply appreciate it.
For people who haven't heard your name, haven't heard your podcast, maybe you can talk about your work. I know you've done a lot of writing going back in your Substack, and you've done some more recent stuff on your Rise to Liberty podcast. You just covered Frank Olson. Maybe you can kind of talk about your interest, your writing, and what led up to the publication of your article, MKUltra's Vietnam Shadow.
Yeah, so my show is called Rise to Liberty. The reason why is initially I was covering third party politics. I was heavily involved in the Libertarian Party, and had I guess a delusion that there was some way to help this system or change the system for the better at some level. I ran a couple of local races and everything, and got hit with a pretty stark reality that this political system, whatever it is, whether you've got to be on board or you're not going to change anything, is pretty much how I view it at this point. And so I kind of switched my focus of my channel over to specifically MK Ultra and mind control research. This is something I've done kind of passively. I was actually counting it not too long ago, and I've been at this now for a period of about 10 years, but taken it very seriously within the last 3 to 4 years. So that's, kind of where the channel was and kind of what got me into this. It was just something I've always been interested in. MK Ultra is just fascinating to me. And then taking this more seriously, I came across Dave McGowan's work. So the hypnosis, the hypothesis of serial killers being involved in mind control or being subjected to mind control obviously is not my hypothesis. I'm really just building upon some of the things that he has pointed out, and other people that have been in that similar type research community. I think yourself fall in that, and there's several other people that do just amazing work. And so I just started looking at a lot of the main causes, and I kept seeing Project Phoenix keep showing up. And of course, I got a hold of everything that Douglas Valentine did. He wrote an amazing book on Phoenix. Was able to interview a lot of the guys, William Colby, blanking on a lot of the guys that he was able to interview before they passed away. But he said in interviews that it seemed like they kind of had a guilty conscience for a lot of this stuff. And anyway, so I went through all of his research and really learned what Phoenix was.
For
And
people who don't know, maybe you can expand on that. Just let them know what that was.
Yeah, so at least officially, um, Operation Phoenix was a counterintelligence program, and what it was meant to do was actually destroy the it was meant to destroy the infrastructure of the Viet Cong. Mainly, they were actually focusing outside of Vietnam, over in Cambodia and surrounding countries. Although a lot did take place in Vietnam, but what would happen is they were going after the infrastructure of the VC itself. And so they were going after the tax collectors. They were going after people that were critical to the infrastructure of the VC. And the way that they were doing this is they would basically roll into a village, a town, and they would try to track down these people. Well, unfortunately, the methods they were using didn't actually work all that well. Um, their success rate was just miserable. It just was not a very successful program at all. And so what ended up happening largely is just a lot of torture, a lot of needless torture. Um, there's actually a clip of William Colby. You can find it. It was from a BBC documentary where William Colby is actually talking about how torture doesn't work. Um, it's something he said that he learned during World War II, that if you torture somebody, the only thing that's going to happen is that they will just tell you whatever you want to hear to get it to stop. And I mean, this is very common knowledge, amongst people who would partake in such a horrific act, but they did it anyways, is the thing. And what ended up happening with the program is, it kind of seems like the people in Washington, the people in charge, wanted to see the numbers. And so they just continued the program anyways. Well, that led to a lot of other really bad things. A lot of sexual assaults, a lot of just needless violence for no reason. But in my opinion, after reading through the documents, hearing the interviews, I think that there was a purpose to it. And the purpose to it was to expose people with certain predilections to a level of violence that was going to be acceptable because it was war. Um, and they were really running a lot of these guys with certain violent predilections to see really what would happen. But I think the goal of it really was to create more violent predators, basically. And that's exactly what ended up happening. Now, I would like to preface that just because you're in the military doesn't mean you're automatically going to be violent, or that because you're a veteran you're going to be violent. I don't think that's what it is. I think this operation was very specific in the way that they handled certain people. A lot of the um, a lot of the people that actually ended up in the program were people that came out of military prison. So a lot of these soldiers, they were put away for war crimes, which, if it's Vietnam and you're getting put away for a war crime, I mean, it's got to be really bad, because war crimes were happening all the time. It was, it
It
was
was a slaughter. It was
right,
basically a slaughter. 2 million Vietnamese died over that whole thing. And there was like
right,
My Lai or whatever, which was famously reported on by Seymour Hersh. But they said
right,
there were like hundreds of My Lais. That was just the one that came out, where they just go into a village and just wipe out people, rape, like the whole,
right,
like really hard. And Phoenix was like that. So they found the most brutal people to enact
right.
this thing. These were not desk jockeys or photographers. These are guys who are really hardcore, doing hardcore stuff.
Right. And this is kind of a shoot first, ask questions later kind of a group. Um, and what's interesting is the CIA was directly involved. It kind of seems like they were pulling the strings. which is why Phoenix is such a interesting aspect to the Vietnam War, because I mean they were involved in many aspects, the CIA, that is. And but with Phoenix, they were directly pulling the strings on the ground. They had agents there involved in torture, or the advanced interrogation techniques. They like to use that soft language to make it sound better. um, and it just got really ugly. um, so the theory is, or at least the working hypothesis is, that a lot of these guys were exposed to this level of violence, and then when they came home, they didn't stop. Because how could you? When once your mind is broken like that, how could you ever go back to just living normally? That transition to go back to normal society, it's hard enough just for a regular tour of duty, let alone going over there to just cause the absolute worst, the worst violence you could possibly imagine.
Havoc, like savagery. Yeah, really rough
Right.
savage.
Right. It was just brutality upon brutality. And, I don't know how you could go back to just living a normal life.
The
So,
same thing happened with the guys who went to Iraq. They came
right.
back and their violence, predilection towards murder and shooting was like thousands of times more than the average person. They
Right.
were used to, they were inured, they were comfortable with violence. They shot people, it was really violent over there.
Right.
So these wars bring back, and that should be a warning to everybody about what's happening in the Middle East right now, because a lot of those guys are getting R&R back in the States.
Right.
They've seen just the most vicious stuff. So this is a
Right.
common phenomenon, but it did happen in Vietnam. But these guys came back, and yeah, you're right. It's like they didn't stop.
Yeah. And I mean, it's all you have to do is just look at like biker culture. Biker culture really exploded after, the Vietnam era, because it was a bunch of guys chasing adrenaline rushes, really. And, there's a lot of the guys that came from Phoenix that ended up becoming one percenters. And then there was just a lot of guys that just came back and tried to pretend to be normal and just were not. Um, and it's really interesting. Some stories from Vietnam never heard or saw combat at all. You know, but then you've got the other side of it, and it's very ugly. It's all the worst things that you hear about. And this wasn't one-sided by any means. The Viet Cong was doing this to us as well. So it wasn't like we were only doing it to them. They were also doing these things to us. But we also taught them how to do these things. So it was all very interesting. And so the hypothesis is that you can take a person and expose them to extreme trauma, because that's what this is. It's a extreme case of PTSD. And by doing that, you're able to create a serial killer, because they are desensitized to a level of violence that the normal person would never encounter. Even nowadays, with exposure to such violent video games or violent media or anything, you can be desensitized to a lot of this, but you're not going to automatically commit these acts unless you're committing these acts in a foreign country beforehand, and then you come home. What are you going to do? Like I said, you just can't go back to normal.
Yeah, no, it's pretty incredible. And so even in your article, you can see some of these guys, the before and after picture, and they look fresh faced as younger people. Like you look recent sign-ups to the military. And when you see them in their serial killer face, they look scary as hell. Like I wouldn't, Leonard Lake, if I saw him coming my way, I would be like,
Right.
whoa.
Right. Right. And I do think that if you've ever been around anyone who's truly intimidating like that, they have an error about them.
Yeah.
Most people, I don't think, are ever actually going to run into a killer like this, statistically speaking. But it doesn't just have to be killers. There's all kinds of incredibly violent people that you can run into, and when you're around a person like that, you can tell. You can just feel it. There's an error about them.
And some of them all they haven't gone to Vietnam, but they've either grown up in really violent environments, like the dad's a beater or a
Right.
traumatic environment. So in a way, it's kind of like a traumatic mind control, where this trauma, they become like used to it. Like that's what they expect out of life. This very rough,
Right.
violent, people beating each other up. The dad beats the mom up, so the guys has that view. A lot of serial
Right.
killers have that. Like the dad tries to put the woman under his thumb and stuff like that. And like I think that
Right.
was the Yorkshire Ripper was like that. His dad was really important to keep the woman, in control. And that's what Leonard Lake was like.
Right.
And it to an extreme level, like that's incredible.
Right. And it's kind of like they don't even have a chance because that's how they're taught from a very early age.
Yeah.
And and yeah, a lot of this is interesting too because, Vietnam is post World War II. So you're suffering the losses of so many men from World War II. A lot of these boys going over to Vietnam are also victims of losing their dads during World War II. So you've got a single mother household. And just look at the statistics on, how terrible boys do in a single mother household. And then throw, you know, this level of trauma on top of that. And it's a recipe for disaster.
Disaster. Some of these guys who were on here were like some of the most brutal serial killers. Because I've done a show about one of the guy. Well, the Green River I know very much about, but this guy, a lot of Randy Kraft people don't know about Randy Kraft for some reason. He slipped under the kind of serial killer radar, but I did a show with McDonough who wrote a book about him. 100 possible victims, like just a rampaging maniac. He has to be seen as like a maniacal, possibly not even working alone, too, which is even
Right.
scarier.
Right. Well, and that's another thing. It's what makes the Vietnam era so interesting and why I think there's something to look at is because of the sheer number. It's just so my favorite quote I think that I've ever heard, and I think it just explains it perfectly, regardless of the topic you're talking about, is the quote from David McGowan of how many coincidences does it take to make a conspiracy? At this point, I don't believe in coincidence. I think it's so mathematically improbable for a genuine coincidence to happen just because of how many other people there are and all the things that they're doing. It doesn't make sense that a genuine coincidence would take place. But the sheer number of soldiers that came back and just continued to kill was just astronomical. That, you know, correlation doesn't equal causation, but there's something to look at here. You know, like it's just the sheer numbers. There's something here, and what we do know, it's just it's too it's too it's too in your face to just ignore this. Um, and that's another thing is that all of these killers, they were just ruthless. They were
Yeah.
just ruthless. Now, another thing, a common trait in a lot of these, especially the ones that I put in my article, is and I probably should have mentioned something about this, but I didn't even really think about it until now. A lot of them had periods where they were missing time, which is a
Really?
very
Wow.
yes, which is a very common, I guess, side effect of mind control. And it's not just like missing a few minutes, although it can be. But when I say missing time, I mean hours, days, weeks, even that you just black out.
Some of that's called hypnotically induced amnesia. Like
Right,
it's a thing. I mean, I've read so many stories recently about this that it really do it. It happens.
right,
So somebody puts them under a deep sleep or something, or gives them drugs. So that's even more evidence of like, wow, something strange is going on. These guys are split brained, and it makes
right,
perfect sense. I mean, the
right,
Golden State Killer is a perfect example. Joseph D'Angelo was like, they didn't find him until he was like 80. He was like a super predator. The guy's, I
right,
mean,
right.
horrible,
And
real
he
horrible
wasn't
human
even
being.
well, it
Yeah.
wasn't even just a killer either. He was raping women, and he started as a burglar. You know,
Right. He was a
so it's
cop. He
like,
worked as a cop. He
right,
was able to keep his job, I think.
yeah,
But like
yeah,
he got
for
I
a
mean, that
long
was one of
time,
the great mysteries of California is him. They got
right,
him through like DNA testing or whatever.
right, and so this even extends beyond, you know, the serial killers on this list as well. Like that, this goes with, the more famous serial killers, Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer, which I was mentioning to you previously, that there's a lot of weird coincidences and parallels between, the men that are on this list, and other main serial killers. One of the biggest things is that it all happened in the same few decades. You
Right.
know,
Right. That's what's
like,
crazy. Like Gary Heidnik was not in Vietnam, but we know for a fact he went under mind control stuff. Like they
right,
overdosed him massive doses of LSD. Same
right,
with Whitey Bulger, another serial killer. They put
yep,
him through the works. He was a subject. He got out and
right,
killed known 19 people, but was able to like that's another guy who got away with it. Like it's weird. Like they
right,
didn't get caught. Some of these guys didn't get caught. And
right,
Dahmer was in the same thing around Heidnik at the same time. He was in the military,
right.
but
And he went to West Germany,
yeah,
which is a major mind control hub. I mean, they were, the CIA was actually running MK Ultra in West Germany even before they started it here in the States. That's where Frank Olson was. Frank Olson was actually a biological and chemical engineer, and he was building the weapons that they were using over in Korea. So,
he was
um,
building the bioweapons that they dropped on Koreans, huh? That's what he's
yes,
doing. Oh yeah, that was a big cover up too. They still
right,
deny it. They still
right,
deny it. It's totally
right,
baloney. They're just the American government's lying about that. What else they've lied to is another story. But I've done a show on that where like the North Koreans have the evidence of these
right.
bioweapons being dropped on. They people don't know this, but like the Korean War was really vicious. Like the Vietnam War was very
Oh
vicious,
yeah,
but Korea was flattened. North and South Korea were just bombed to smithereens by guys like Curtis LeMay and all these other guys. They just
right.
annihilated with tons and tons of bombs and testing and violence and Manchurian candidate type stuff. So
Oh yeah, yeah. It was nasty. I mean, it
yeah.
it seems like after World War II, it was purely a just wars for profit and drugs and territory, or not, less so territory, but more so, um, you know, the the basics. I'm blanking on the word right now. The raw steel, um, looking for, like, the Emerald Triangle, or the Crescent Moon area where they were growing the heroin and stuff. Like, this was about
Yeah,
products.
McCloy, politics of heroin in Southeast
Right.
Asia or whatever. So huge amount of money. Yeah.
Right. And so, and then there could be arguments made, World War II and previous wars, that, it was
All right, we
also
got
about
10
that.
minutes. I can't believe you've already done 30 minutes, but I just got the warning. So, anyway.
But yeah, so to close up on this, it's just really interesting that all of this would happen. Now, the one thing I think should be addressed is the common excuse is that there was lead in the gasoline, right? And that caused a lot of people to act more violent. And obviously, lead poisoning is a thing. It's real. It happens. And we don't really fully understand, like, the negative aspect of what lead poisoning can do. So could that be a cause? Yes, but that's not like, oh, there was lead poisoning, so it just caused a bunch of serial killers. Like, that
It's a
seems
good
like
cover.
such a,
It's a good cover.
right.
These
I
guys, a
mean,
lot of these guys are doing really violent stuff. It's hard to believe that they sent them out to do the military sifts through its people to find different people for different jobs. So
right.
if it's hard to believe that they didn't identify the most vicious and the
Right.
guys who would do the killing for him. And you talked about numbers earlier, but like Robert McNamara, they had that mentality of the 50s and the 60s in this warfare where like
Right.
spreadsheets and numbers and datas and statistics was all about winning the war. So that's what they would feed to guys like LBJ.
Right.
We had 66,000 kills and we got 1,400 square miles done. It's like it was that
Right.
kind of it was the post-war kind of scientific stuff that they did. So that's also what they were applying to people and things like that, is trying to find them. So
Right. Well, and I think that's how the people in Washington look at us, right?
yeah,
Like
yeah,
we are numbers on a spreadsheet. It's really easy to say keep this program going when you're in Washington and the people being affected are 6,000 miles away,
right.
Like it's really easy
And of
when
another race, they're just Asians,
right.
like, hey, who cares? Like they were
Right. Well, and
terrible. We were terrible to the Koreans and the Vietnamese.
oh, and the Cambodians, it's just that entire region. And also people have got to think too, this is really around the time of like Bruce Lee, and this is before Bruce Lee because Bruce Lee actually opened the West up to the Orient, like through culture and everything. So people weren't into learning about this culture like they are today. It was nothing like it is today, where Asian culture is kind of so prevalent, between the Japanese culture and such um, such a huge population from people from those parts of the world here. It wasn't like that. Of course, there
That's
were
right.
people here, but it's just
There was
not
still
like how
kind
it
of
was
the other,
today.
yeah. There's still, not, it wasn't a multicultural world.
Right,
1965, that civil rights stuff and the immigration laws weren't the same, so
right,
California's changed radically. I mean, it's just a total polyglot society. It
right,
didn't used to be when I was growing up. It was very the white kind of. It was unusual to have a bunch of Asians. Like my hometown is like a third
right,
Asian now. It didn't used to be.
right. Yeah, Chinatown not being a thing, or
Yeah,
rooftop
yeah,
Koreans not being a thing.
right. So, but I mean, that's easy to kind of treat of people as the other, and then
Right,
also create just these crazy killers. Like that's what
right.
people wanted. We were trying to kill the Viet Cong and the communists, and
Well, and that's the big scare tactic, right? Is the communist is the other, the enemy, and that's a massive mind control method. Is there's the victim, and then there's the enemy, and that's one of the biggest key points to any sort of mass brainwashing, because brainwashing happens on the individual level and the mass level. And the mass brainwashing usually takes form in us, the victim, and then the other person, the enemy. Today's version of that is terrorism, is the terrorist, or whoever you know they're pointing out. So, but
Hamas
that's
is going to come get us. We got to get them, and they might not be that many Hamas members, but
right,
that's worked. It's worked. They're propagandizing the daylights out of us in the States for that, all that stuff that goes on in the Middle East.
right,
And they're actually using the terrorists to accomplish their goals at the same time,
right,
which
right. They
most people
usually
don't know.
create them.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is a known fact. They've financed extremist groups to pit against other groups. This is all verifiable, but it's part of the mind control. It's part of the propaganda. But what these guys probably got exposed to was pretty heavy stuff. I'm not saying that they were all mind control, but oftentimes these programs, especially if the CIA is involved, there's other elements to them. They're
Right,
running stuff, much like Jim Jones. We didn't know at the time when Jonestown happened that there was like a back program to it. It was like a
right.
culture creation, and they wasted like 900 people. And there's
Yep,
like a CIA agent on site there. It's like Jim Jones says something. He goes, "Get Dyer out of here." Well, who the hell is
right,
Dyer? The assigned CIA agent to go.
right,
So, they're
right.
learning
And
these techniques, and that was a huge mind control. I mean, it's almost like something from Vietnam where you go, or a communist thing where you have a bullhorn and somebody talking all the time, and you're isolated from your friends, and it's eye sensory isolation and tons of
Yep.
drugs. Those people were getting
Right.
hit with all kinds of mind control drugs. And you don't know what these other guys got, these guys in the military. There were supposedly heavy duty tests on American soldiers of things that tried to make them more violent. I forgot what the name of the drug was, but it was like called Q or something that they tried to maximize their aggression, which is really
Right.
crazy. They figured it out. There were studies that were taking place in by a doctor. Well, this is just one known in Haight-Ashbury where they were testing rats and they would give them meth and they would
Right.
start eating each other. And they're like, well, let's give it to the people and see what happens.
Right.
They gave it to the biker gangs and they got super freaking violent.
Right. I
And
mean,
that's like,
imagine that. And
that's
stories
why
being
Manson insisted his followers to do meth on the night of that crime because he
right.
had to know he was into hypnotism too, and he
Oh
was in
yes.
that environment.
Oh
So
yes.
talk about mind control and how it probably passed through him to other people and all that. So,
Right. And yeah, there's a lot of connections to Jonestown. That's maybe we'll have to have a longer discussion on that as well. I've done quite a bit
yeah,
of diving into that.
it's
They
interesting we mentioned Jonestown because one of the guys on here is white who killed Moscone and Harvey Milk. It was like a week
correct.
after Jonestown. It was very close following on to Jonestown.
Correct.
And White was whacked too. Like he would do things like he had been tampered with. He actually
Right.
like quit his job and then asked for it back, which is a sign of like either he had CTE or something. Like he did
He was
strange stuff.
damaged.
Yeah, he was
He was
damaged.
damaged.
Yeah, he was damaged.
And I think that's what a lot of this is, right? It's controlling the damage through someone because it's exposing them to the trauma to be able to create a disassociative multi-personality state in a controlled manner. And that's really what MK Ultra was trying to figure out, or at least half of it. The other half was cybernetics and stuff, but that's a different discussion. But really it was the controlled the control of being able to expose them to extreme trauma to create the dissociative state.
Yeah, no, they figured it out. They figured it. I mean, the thing
100%.
is that you want to know how brilliant McGowan was, is that he tied into East Esterbrook's much more than
Right.
any of these other MK Ultra researchers. He got it, and Esterbrook started in the 30s. So this is
Right.
way before that. We'll only have 60 seconds left, Jacob. Where can people find your work, Rise to Liberty, and Beware the Mockingbird?
Yeah. So the best places you can find me, I'm on YouTube, Rumble, X, Instagram, Telegram, and Substack, and anywhere. Beware the Mockingbird, or anywhere that says Rise to Liberty. But risetoliberty.com/links, and that is my master link. It pulls up every platform I'm on.
Cool. People check that out. I will put a link to that. I'll put links to you in the show notes. And yeah, we should talk about Jonestown or
Oh yes.
anything. I mean, all this stuff is good. I mean, there's just a lot of people didn't know this side nuance to history that these